following program is classified G. It's suitable for all ages. We would like to remind our viewers that the views expressed in this program by our participating guests are solely viewpoints of them who take part and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. This is an opinion-based program.
On an all-new Get Real, do we have an energy crisis? With long lines at the pump and more uncertainty over electricity supply, Sri Lanka's energy sector has been discussed vividly in public circles, creating uncertainty about the nation's future on the energy front. With the increment in fuel prices during a pandemic to selling a 40% stake at the Udaya power plant to an American company, is Sri Lanka heading towards an energy disaster? Is this just hot air sponsored by the opposition for the sake of creating chaos, or is there a real spark behind the claims? With the possibility of finding gas in the territorial waters of Sri Lanka, are we harnessing our full potential, or are we letting the gold mine go to waste and then complain about it in the future? For insights and analysis tonight, I'm glad to welcome back the Minister of Energy, Udaya Gammanpila.
Real views, real opinions, and for an honest conversation, this is Get Real, and it all starts right now.
From Studio 24, with opinions that matter, it's time to get real with Mahieash Johnney.
And a very good evening to all. Thank you very much for being here on a Monday night as I invite you to get real with me as we begin this very busy news week. There are many things to tell you tonight and talk about as we focus on Sri Lanka's current status in politics and discuss issues that we may all have to face as we go on in terms of our energy sector. Well, in my opening statement this evening, the duplicate. What on earth can Mahieash be going on about tonight? Well, let's talk about the current status of our country. Last week, we saw a protest organized by the people-loving, also caring, more interested in your well-being opposition at a time on a pandemic. Mr. Opposition Leader, please do love me less. Why? Because health is not wealth at this moment. Because thanks to our health officials, military, and everyone who has tirelessly worked more than 2 years now to keep COVID at the lowest possible state, well, that's not important for the opposition. What's important is asking the question. Thanks, Sappada. So out on the streets after mustering to get your party supporters to rally together for the cameras, on goes the opposition leader walking in a parade we've all seen before. Successful leaders around the world have tried new things to become successful. They've gone against the narrative at hand and has created a new narrative that has furthered the growth of a nation. Winston Churchill in the UK did it, Barack Obama in the US did it, and Mahieash Rajapaksa in Sri Lanka did it as well. To recapture it, he went against all leaders before him who've taken concerning the war, the peace negotiation stance, and opted for a military approach. Of course, everybody in the world was against it, but he went ahead and ended a war that all leaders before him couldn't finish. Everybody said that it was an unwinnable war, but to go against the narrative, that's what Mahieash Rajapaksa did. He also changed the narrative again in 2015 when he lost the presidency to his own party's general secretary and his friend for over 25 years. What did President Mahieash Rajapaksa do when President Sirisena reclaimed the party he served for more than 30 years, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party? He went against the norm once again. He created a new party of his own and in a mere 2 years won the first election ever contested at the local government level, and then the presidential, and then also the parliamentary. He changed the narrative of 2015 again by going against the norm. Enter Mr. Opposition Leader. who for aeons in his political career has not been a person who's been known to go against the tide. Case in point, agreeing with Ranil Wickremesinghe for more than 25 years in the UNP, suddenly rips a page from the Mahinda Rajapaksa playbook and yields results. He created his party, went against the mothership, and won the first election against the mother party when he saw that his current leader, Ranil Wickremesinghe, wouldn't give him the helm he so desperately wanted for many years. So now he's the opposition leader. So that worked for him. In February of 2015, just a few weeks after the January 8th loss, the then president broke ranks with its party stance, former president at that time, and engaged in a public protest called the Mahinda Sulanga against the pending calamity that was to be as good governance. Even my guest tonight, Minister Udaya Gammanpila, was a pioneer in that. At that time, the country was not facing a pandemic, protesting was not creating a health hazard, and organizers of those events took appropriate steps to hold them with minimal disruption to the public. Those protests were successful in alerting the public to the impending disaster at hand. It all gained traction, and everything former President Mahinda Rajapaksa said began to become a reality with the bond scam, irresponsible financial management, erroneous economic policies, stalled public infrastructure projects, and wasted state assets. Well, you know the rest. This led to the 2017 local government elections, which made the newly formed SLPP, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramanu, to take the victory lap towards the governance of this country. And that's what Mahinda did. Doesn't this seem to be the very familiar story with our current opposition leader? He goes against the mother party, creates his party, contests the election, obliterates the mother party, gains the leadership role, and then holds a protest and posts similar pictures like former president and our current prime minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Why do I shed light on this? First, of course, the opposition leader is very much within his rights to hold protest. But those protests must be for a real cause, not for creating chaos for the sake of creating chaos. As of now, the country is really at a crossroad. We are fighting from all fronts. So now the time to showcase a different kind of politics or different kind of leadership. If the opposition leader wants to gain power at a certain point in time, then show the people of this country something they haven't seen. A politician that cares for the people through his actions and through his words. Because if he, for 1 millisecond, thinks that protesting at a time when the country is trying its level best to keep a pandemic at hand and yet keep the nation afloat, pulling from the leg of the ones who are trying their level best, the health officials, the military, and everyone who's fighting this pandemic, well, that isn't a new type of politics. That's just more of the same. Although I'm afraid I drastically have to disagree with his political belief and his way of politics, I got to give it to the leader of the JVP, Mr. Anura Kumara Dissanayake, who in a budget debate said that many leaders with various backgrounds came to power claiming to do this and that. However, Sri Lanka remains to be a victor. What does that mean? Suppose we've tried everything and the only thing we didn't try is the change in the mentality of our people. Then for sure. But in that case, we will continue to be at the depths and continue to complain. All right, a lot more to discuss with the current status of politics and more so about the issues about Sri Lanka's energy sector. My guest tonight, Minister of Energy Udaya Gammanpila, will be here shortly. But before that, with more energy in him is Mr. Danadu Thanawasa. Good to see you, Danadu. Tonight, our focus is about the energy sector and what exactly the country might be facing. In the past few weeks, we've seen fuel lines, gas lines, and there is such a conversation saying that the country is going through a very rough period. What's the truth? What's your focus on the real story tonight?
Something, Mahieash, we have seen on Get Real, and something that I think you have been doing, have had to do for quite some time, is to correct certain misinformation that is spreading. And that is exactly what is going to happen in the real story tonight as well, given the fact that energy, and when there is even a minute concern made about energy, people tend to panic, and the panic buying just goes overflow, and the people that actually need certain resources don't really get it. So with those thoughts in mind, the initial point that we are going to focus on is the reason this topic has come up, is the tragic fact that the country saw panic buying of fuel within the past few months, multiple times and not just once. This has been amplified by the fact that the country is fighting to balance its foreign exchange reserves required in the purchase of fuel. The volatile nature of energy prices affects almost all sectors of the country directly or indirectly. Today, the conversation is primarily focused on the apparent lack of gas, petrol and diesel. In order to get a proper breakdown of the supply aspect of fuel, it is important to recognize the fundamentals of the extraction process and how Sri Lanka meets its energy needs, which is in a transformative stage given the work of the current Minister of Energy. One key aspect to bear in mind is the rise in crude oil prices across the world. The OPEC reports for this month suggest that petrol prices have reached an 8-year high, alongside crude oil, which has not only affected Sri Lanka during this time period, but also countries such as the United Kingdom, Lebanon, and even China. Sri Lanka primarily refines crude oil to deal with the demand for petrol and diesel. Based on the capabilities at the Sapakaskanda oil refinery, which is Sri Lanka's single largest oil refinery, from 1 barrel of crude oil, 13% of petrol and 30% of diesel can be acquired. 37% of the production from crude oil is burnt oil and naphtha, and another 19% is jet fuel. Therefore, only 43% of crude oil can be used as petrol or diesel. Most of the rest was the type used for firing oil-powered electricity generation, which has a low need now with overflowing hydroelectricity reservoirs and completely full storage capacity for these petroleum products. Prices per barrel of a selected oil fluctuates greatly with time. However, when considering the current time period, the import of a barrel of petrol costs about 95 rupees, a barrel of diesel costs about 93 rupees, and a crude oil barrel costs roughly 85 rupees. Based on these values and the efficiency of the refinery process, it can be understood that it is far more beneficial for the country, which is facing a foreign exchange crunch, to import refined petrol and diesel. This is not the result of a lack of fuel resources. Against this backdrop, despite government repeated reassurances of no shortage of fuel, panic buying created by these deliberately misleading, mischievous claims of fuel shortage that led to the shortages at the pumps, where their usual stores for 3 days were exhausted in a day through panic buying, and replenishing the stocks at the pump takes few days. Despite the minister reassuring the public, the false and misleading alternatives stood ground. The Presidential Media Center issued a press release last week detailing the prevailing stocks of petroleum resources within the country, which will not create a fuel shortage. According to the stock details issued by the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited, there were 28,185 metric tons of auto diesel, 54,884 metric tons of petrol 92, 9,597 metric tons of super diesel, 15,267 metric tons of petrol 95, and 18,946 metric tons of jet fuel and kerosene in stocks by the 15th of this month. In addition, Sri Lanka received another 35,000 metric tons of diesel, petrol, jet fuel and kerosene each yesterday. Another key concern within the media today has been the investor stake at the Yugadanavi power plant. According to the government, the agreement entered into by the Sri Lankan government and the US-based energy infrastructure firm New Fortress Energy Incorporated, a measure taken to address the drawn-out financial crisis the power sector has been facing during the past few decades. In return for this investment, 40% of the stake of the said power plant will be given to the New Fortress Energy Incorporated, and Sri Lanka will refrain from purchasing liquefied natural gas from any party apart from New Fortress Energy Incorporated for a period of time. Given that this created a certain amount of political discussion in the public forum, the President alongside the Cabinet is focusing on how to iron out the details in the current time period. The discussion on the shortage of gas has also been burdened on the government. In assessing the situation on the ground, once again the global prices of LPG should be understood. State-run Litrogas has said that suppliers had asked for 109% increase in current LC facility in terms of the contract as gas prices have risen since July. However, Litros Gas Limited announced that more than 800,000 domestic gas litres are to be released to the market within this week. This has been a result of the forex shortages, which the current government is in the process of addressing. Unfortunately, given the rise in prices for gases, the effects have trickled down to basic needs of citizens as well. State Minister of Cooperative Services, Marketing Development and Consumer Protection Lasantha Alagewanna told the media that he is confident the shortage will be filled within 2 to 3 weeks, stating that the gap left by Litro's competitive company Laughs Gas that had not been refilled was the cause of the continued shortage felt in the market. LAFS is also facing a similar issue pertaining to forex reserves within the country, but the calming of gas supply is expected to happen in the near future. Given all these facts, being a mindful consumer is an important aspect to develop in today's status quo, especially when it comes to energy resources. Mahieash, the energy minister is someone who's working really hard to speak to and to curb the energy concerns of most people in this country, and that is something that we should give priority, and I believe we'll be giving priority within today's program.
Indeed, thank you very much. We really need to understand that there is a lot of noise in the public space, and we really need to drain it down, find what exactly is the truth, and get to the bottom of things. Thank you very much, Udaya, with the real story. Let's take a short commercial break. On the other side, Minister of Energy Udaya Gammanpila. This is Get Real. Be right back. Welcome back everyone to Get Real. Time now to get some context into the conversation we are having tonight. We're talking about energy concerns in Sri Lanka, what exactly going on, lots of issues pertaining to fuel, energy, gas. These were in the headlines in the past few weeks. So let's get a response from the person who has a purview on the subject, Minister of Energy, Udaya Gammanpila. Welcome, sir, to the program. Welcome back. Good to see you. You seem to be coming to the program
very frequently.
Very frequently when there is an issue with regard to fuel. Last time, I think, when the prices went up, you were here trying to explain what exactly happened. Now, let me point blank ask you, sir. Is there a fuel crisis in Sri Lanka right now?
There is no such crisis at all. There are adequate stocks are available with us, but we must admit that there is a foreign currency crisis in the country. We don't have adequate amount of foreign currency to meet our import bills. Because of that, government has significantly curtailed our importation. So, because of that, we have identified certain goods not as non-essential, or we don't need it immediately, maybe an essential. For instance, vehicles, of course we need, but people can manage with the existing ones because the lifetime of a vehicle is longer than most of other commodities. So, at this moment, government has prioritized certain imports over the others to utilize our limited foreign currency reserves. Firstly, medicine and medical equipment. Secondly, fuel. Then other essential food. So because of that, because of this government's policy decision of prioritizing financing oil importation or fuel importation, we have so far ensured that there would not be a fuel crisis. In a way, people don't tend to believe it because it's a miracle, kind of a miracle, because we don't have our own oil reserves. We don't have adequate foreign currency to purchase petroleum products. Thirdly, we don't have adequate storage facilities. In such a backdrop, in a way, it's a miracle to ensure uninterrupted fuel supply, especially when powerful countries like India, China, UK are facing fuel shortage at the moment.
So what you say justifies the long queues we see at the pump. As soon as there is something of this sort that is being raised, when you talk about issues like that, people running to the pump and getting their tanks filled kind of makes sense. Or what is your response to that? Is that necessary? Is that something that people really need to do? If you're saying that there is a dollar crisis, we don't have adequate facilities in Sri Lanka, should we stockpile?
Not at all, because I said, despite all these difficulties, I said something more. We have ensured uninterrupted fuel supply. Now, I am not the person to be blamed for recent queues at fuel pumping stations, because there were adequate stocks. And we do have, otherwise, there must be a prolonged shortage, but there was only 2 to 3 days. What happened? Very irresponsible person, abusing the media space given by you all to him. He has told the nation on 4th successive time that the full shortage is imminent. Then that person is less known. People don't rely on him. But this news is telecasted over people's respective chosen channel. There are a lot of people have chosen Derana as their news channel. So when if Derana telecasts this news, people believe Derana, not that person, then they rush to the fuel station. Then usually fuel station have stocks only for 2 days or maximum 3 days. When the entire country comes to fuel stations, naturally there will be queues there. On the other hand, the people who used to purchase 500 fuel only for 500 rupees or 1000 rupees now demand full tank. What's the end result? Then within hours, fuel station will run out of stocks. On a very same day, if all fuel stations in the country get out of stocks, we need 2 to 3 days to restore the situation. That's why there was a temporary fuel shortage. Queues because of the news, temporary shortage because everybody got full tank on the very same day.
But if you know where this started from.
Let me finish this. If there's a real fuel shortage, then queues must be at our oil terminals where our storage tanks are located, because then fuel stations are going there to get their bowsers pumped, and we say, no, we don't have stocks. We never face that kind of a situation.
If you said 4 successive times, okay, this individual who has come in front of the media and made these irresponsible statements, putting the entire country into a disarray and creating unnecessary panic over the public, 4th consecutive time. So which means he will do it for the 5th time. He will do it for the 6th time. Why isn't action being taken on that front in order to curtail it? Because what is happening, the end result is a disruption to this nation. It is not just a prank or a joke or anything where we can have a good laugh and go back home and have a good time. That is not happening. People are gathering to the fuel station, going through so much of hassle, and end result is excessive stress, and then they get pissed off with the government. Why isn't the government responding to that? If you know that this person exists, and if you know who the person is, and if you know where it is, why isn't steps being taken in order to expose them?
He is the Assistant Secretary Trade Union Affairs of the leader of the opposition, unfortunately. I always respect my good friend Honorable Sajith Premadasa, but unfortunately he has appointed this person as his Assistant Secretary Trade Union Affairs, and this person, he is the one who has repeatedly misled the nation. And once our officers complained to the police arrested him and produced before the magistrate court, and unfortunately magistrate decided he has the freedom of expression. So I think rather than relying on police, next time we must retain a good lawyer and represent on behalf of, not on behalf of the CPC, on behalf of the entire nation. As you correctly said, people got queued up despite the severely bad weather, despite the pandemic, and they had to sacrifice a lot of their day-to-day affairs to waste their time in queues. So if there are no laws, I think we must formulate laws to punish this kind of people.
Let's get out from fuel to gas. Apparently there was another story saying there was a shortage of gas. People are also now talking about electricity as well. I'll get your response later on. But what is the situation with gas?
Frankly, gas is not within my purview. Gas is regulated by the Consumer Affairs Authority, which is within the purview of the Minister of Trade. So, as I told you, there is a rank of prioritization for importation of goods. So, firstly, medical items, secondly, fuel, even that fuel, petroleum products, LPG is again a petroleum product, but petrol diesel gets priority over gas because there are other alternatives for LPG. When you say gas, we use cooking gas is LPG in Sri Lanka. In certain countries it could be NG, but here LPG. So, in addition to that, now here CPC is a corporation. This corporation has been, now there is a huge price increase in the world market. Sri Lanka is the one and only country in the entire world. Correct me if I am wrong, one and only country in the entire world which has not increased prices of petrol and diesel during the last 5 months. So we have set a record again. So, but because we are.
What's the reason? Why aren't you increasing it? What's the reason? If you're saying there is a dollar crisis, if you're saying prices are really
I am
high.
of the view that prices must be cost reflective. But finance ministry doesn't think so, because Minister of Energy should get the consent of the Minister of Finance to increase the prices. In a way, this is unfair by the poor people. Now say there are billionaires in the country who use very luxurious vehicles. This vehicle, 1 liter works only for 3 to 4 kilometers. So we provide fuel at a subsidized rate for this person. Who bear the cost? Not me, not the Minister of Finance, not the President or the Prime Minister. The cost would be borne by the entire nation by paying indirect taxes to the government. So when a poor person in a remote village walk 3 kilometers to reach a retail outlet, and when he purchases something, he pays the subsidy enjoyed by the billionaires of this country. Is it fair? I think if you use petrol, you should bear the cost. If you use diesel, you should bear the cost, because you should not allow somebody else to bear your cost. That is unreasonable. Unfortunately, we have not get the nod. So nobody, sometimes say somebody can claim that we are not transferring the burden to the people. No, not. We are accumulating the burden to pass to the people in the future.
True. Does that mean we can expect a price increase, a price hike?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
The
but even the central bank has said cost must be reflective, otherwise we can't. The economy can't bear this anymore. Then, in the end, when you say the government, it's a collective decision. Yes. Unfortunately, in our country, there's a saying in India: when politicians make decisions thinking about the next election, statesmen make the decisions thinking about the next generation. Unfortunately, we are lacking statesmen. We have only politicians.
I want to get your take about the power plant project, the Udaya power plant, where there was some issues pertaining to it, and you are part of the protesting party within the government for that. I want to get your take on that, but before that, let's take a short commercial break. I'm in conversation with the Minister of Energy, who has assured the public there is no fuel shortage, there is no fuel crisis. So you're right to the pump to get your tank filled for no reason. Well, that's on you. You should have done a little bit more research in order to understand what was going on in the country. Let's take a short commercial break. You're watching Get Real. We'll be right back. to Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Minister of Energy, Minister Udaya Gammanpila. So we've been talking about whether there's a fuel crisis in Sri Lanka, and the Minister assured that there isn't, and most of the time the people have been misled by a person, the Assistant Secretary, I believe, of the opposition leader for Trade Union Affairs. Well, lies. There are a lot of lies on social media per se, so we must be really prudent in understanding where the truth is. You got to need to trust the sources. If you can't verify from one, then verify by many as you can, because your time and your energy is much more vital in this day and age. Minister, again, I'm going to ask you point blank. Is there a split in the government? Because we seem to be, there's a little bit of infighting going on within the cabinet. The Udaya power plant project, I think around 30 cabinet ministers are there, and out of that 3 are against, I think 28, 3 are against this particular project, which is deemed to be one of the projects that is going to bring investors into Sri Lanka. You are one of them. You, Minister
Minister Vasudeva.
And Minister Vasudeva as well. All 3 of you are against this. What's going on? What's happening within this cabinet? You guys did your level best to bring this government. You and Minister Wimal from Mahinda Sulunga onwards. You all did all that. You all brought Mahinda Rajapaksa back from the 2015 debacle. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the current president, 2 years he has completed last week. And here you are infighting. What's going on?
Johnny, may I ask you a very personal question?
Please, go ahead.
Are you married?
Yeah, okay.
So don't you fight with your own wife? Time to time, not every day, at least once in your married life. You know, Johnny, the smallest organization in the world is the family. The minimum number of members are only 2. But even that organization, there are infights. You know, not like governments, when you choose your life partner, better half, right? You associate a long time after both of you are convinced to each other that he is the one and she is the one, only you are going to have the wedlock. So, despite all these test experiments and all these, sometimes you match horoscopes as well. After doing all that, you get difference of opinions. Yeah. When the smallest organization face that kind of splits, what can you expect from a 16-party coalition? There are 16 different parties. Why do we maintain different parties? Because we have different opinions. But we have an election manifesto. That is something we all agreed upon. So
this is the President's manifesto.
President's election manifesto is the contract between the government and the people. So government is bound to implement the manifesto. If there is any deviation, the government is bound to explain to the people. When there is a new issue which has not been covered with manifesto, then of course then we should have a dialogue to reach consensus before implementing it. Then if you look back, whenever we had a difference of opinion with the government, as you correctly pointed out, this is our own government. We pioneered this formation of this government. On the other hand, people heavily relied on us. Moreover, on 18th of July 2020, Minister Wimal Weerawansa and I signed a joint pledge to the nation saying, if our government is to go out of the track, we will be the opposition within to bring the government back to the track. So that is our duty towards the people. Then whenever we fought, or when we have fought internally, there are only 2 occasions. There are 2 categories of occasion. Firstly, whenever government is deviating from the election manifesto or the contract with the people, then we shout. Secondly, when the government is going to implement something new without having an internal dialogue, then of course we shout. So there are 4 or 5 instances in the last 15 months that we have fought the government. But whenever we fought, all these instances can be broadly categorized into these 2 categories.
So you are telling this is a healthy fight?
Of course, because people elected us with great expectations. So as politicians elected by the people, as people's representative, don't we have a duty by the people to ensure that we would do what we promised.
Collectively, the cabinets, and not collectively, now y'all three are against this particular decision at the Udaya project, where there is a second party, the investor from the United States of America, a country that we rarely get any kind of investors coming into this country, and we have a massive fight on another level at the UNHRC, where they are trying to bring false accusations, resolutions and everything against our country, against this president, against the prime minister, against our military, and that is happening. Now here we see a country of that sort is coming to do business with us, and the first instance they do a business, not just the opposition but parties within the government are against it. So what exactly are you shouting against on this particular project, and what exactly, how could that be building investor confidence in the long run? Because right now, if we get an investor from a country, a nation where we rarely get from, and suddenly he gets so much of backlash, do you think anyone else would rethink coming into this country and invest?
Very pertinent question. Johnny, I must reiterate that we are not against foreign investment, or we are not anti-American in that sense, because we are not against any American investment or any foreign investment. I have no issue with giving 40% of Yugadanavi to New Fortress Energy. It would have been better if there was an auction, then we may have obtained higher price. But we are raising 4 other issues. We should bring US investors to the country, but not at the cost of good governance, not at the cost of losing our friends in the international community, not at the cost of jeopardizing our national security and energy security, not at the cost of losing our one and only hope of mining oil and gas in Mannar Basin. Those are the 4 reasons for us to mark our protest to this deal.
Why is that? Because what's so
no, let me take the 4, right? There was a tender floated by the CEB to construct the gas pipeline and to station a FSRU. You know, FSRU stands for Floating Storage and Regasification Unit. So there was a tender. In the end, this tender was secured by Pakistan-Chinese joint venture. Right? So they have followed the proper tender procedure and secured the bid. They have invested in documents, hiring experts to analyze our documents. This tender process was very complex one, a highly technical process. Then with bonds, performance bonds, everything has been placed, and all of a sudden, Sri Lankan government has offered the very same project to a company which has not participated in that tender process. Then, this is happening first time in our history. So then, how can investors rely on Sri Lankan tender procedure, Sri Lankan government, and Sri Lanka as a whole? Because good corporate body will always rely on the systems instead of people. As long as Johnny is there, I am secured. I should not think in that manner. You may be here, you may not be here. But there must be a proper system to facilitate any foreign investor, whoever is in the power, whoever who holds the key office in the government. That's the first issue that we raise. Second one is, of course, diplomatic issue. Now see, earlier, Japan, South Korea and India expressed their interest in this project. Government said, no, we can't give you, we will have a tender procedure. Otherwise, one of these governments would have secured this project. After following the tender procedure, China and Pakistan jointly secured this project. Now, these 5 countries have been helping us throughout the recent past. In contrast, the USA has been harassing us during the last 20-30 years. In this backdrop, what have we done? we have rejected all our friends and facilitated the enemy. What is the message we give to the international community? If you support us, we will ignore you. If you harass us, we will welcome you. Then if somebody wants to get the Sri Lanka's attention, that country should harass, torture us instead of helping us. Is it a good message to the international community? Thirdly, energy security. Now, in the recent past, we have noticed that US forced us to implement certain things with the threat of imposing economic embargo. You can recall UNHRC resolutions.
Yes.
But we were able to stand by those threats because there were other friendly countries to back us. Now here, we are going to give US company the monopoly to supply LNG to our power stations, which will account for 40% of country's power supply. Then, in future, they can say, look, unless you punish your war heroes, we will stop the gas supply. Unless you bring a federal constitution, we will put the entire country in the darkness. So, we are trying to give another weapon to our enemy to shoot at us. Is it a prudent decision? Fourthly and finally, as the energy minister, I have a genuine concern. As you know, we have found potential gas deposits in Mannar Basin. Mannar Basin alone, gas potential is 9 trillion cubic feet. 9 trillion cubic feet, huge one. Right? If we can mine those, of course, Sri Lanka will be again debt-free country after 1955.
What's the status on that?
We are in the process now. We are really worried with this New Fortress Energy deal because our mining is a challenging task because our gas deposits are around 3 kilometers underneath in the offshore. So it's a costly affair, but it still is profitable with the current prices. But gas, it's very difficult to store and transport because you have to liquefy it, liquefaction process, making it liquefied natural gas, LNG. You have to bring the temperature 160 centigrade minus 160 centigrade. So it's a costly affair. So if we can bring gas from pipes directly to power station, then of course we have no such issue of cooling it down. Unfortunately, in this section 4.2 of this New Fortress Energy Agreement, we have given a monopoly of gas supply to our power station to New Fortress Energy forever. Not for 5 years as somebody has interpreted. It's forever. Therefore, we will have a great challenge or great difficulty in finding a potential investor for our gas mining activities. Anyway, Johnny, we have mining oil and gas in Sri Lanka is a huge challenge. Why? We are going to enter into the industry when the world has decided to leave the industry. Recently at COP26 in UK, government leaders decided not to have oil refineries. After 2022, a majority of the countries agreed to stop use of fossil fuel after 2050, by 2050. In this backdrop, we have a very limited number of years. In such a scenario, it's very difficult to find an investor for a new country. Secondly, because of the pandemic, pandemic, economic condition of the world is very gloomy. Because of that, there are very limited number of funds for the investment. Thirdly, Sri Lanka's risk profile it has drastically changed, and our country risk is very high at this moment. So we anyway had these three challenges. Now we have a new challenge created by we ourselves.
It's I mean, in a way, it's very healthy to see, and it's novel for us people here in this
country, even though the fact that they're trying to, most are trying to interpret it in a different way, saying there's a split in the government, but it's actually a healthy dialogue happening within the government in order to put everybody on the correct track. I think that is a commendable effort, and I think that is the way we should be proceeding ahead when somebody is doing something wrong within the government. The government itself is self-criticizing itself and trying to bring a better deal to the nation. I think I'm happy that it's happening, the dialogue is happening. Hopefully that people also understand that kind of politics is what we need, rather than, you know, completely blindly following one thing for the sake of following it. Let's take a short commercial break. I'm in conversation with the Minister of Energy, Minister Udaya Gammanpila. You're watching Get Real. We'll be right back. Welcome back everyone to Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Minister of Energy, Minister Udaya Gammanpila. We've been talking about the current energy concerns in Sri Lanka and what exactly the government is doing. The Minister also shed light self-criticizing within the government instead of waiting till the opposition comes and pinpoint certain errors that is occurring. Let's talk about the opposition. The opposition is now conducted last week a protest, just like it brings memories of you know, in from Nugegoda, if I remember right. I think about a couple of weeks later, the January 8th 2015 election, you again, Minister Wima, were very instrumental in bringing this rally of protests that led to the return of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, and also the election of current President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and the establishment of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna as a winning party from that point onwards. Nugegoda, the Mahinda Sulanga, you were very much instrumental and you did this. And you all were very powerful in terms of telling the people what kind of error they made in 2015 with regard to the economy, with regard to where the direction of the country that was going on, and with regard to the presidency, what kind of errors. And after 5 years, we saw the nonsense that occurred within the good governance, and what you all said at that time, 2015, was completely accurate. Now, fast forward, you all are now in the power. You all are the big kahunas, so to say. The opposition is doing the same, taking a page from your playbook and doing the same thing right now. Saying that the country is in shambles, asking the question Dan Sapada, which was something that was synonymous with current Prime Minister. Yeah, exactly. So now they're asking that question from you all. And your response is quite similar to what the good governance did at that time. What's going on, Minister? Why is there protest? Why is there people gathering around the opposition, around opposition leader Sajith Premadasa? Why is this happening? Is the country so bad right now?
Well, firstly, as you correctly pointed out, I was in the forefront of leading the protest against the previous government. So I admit the right of the opposition to express their views against the government. We are not against it. That's a right that we enjoyed with great difficulties, with huge resistance. So the opposition should have the opportunity to express themselves. There is no doubt. But if the opposition is concerned and conscious about the people, opposition claims that they are doing everything for the betterment of the people. So people must be the focus. If it was the case, they shouldn't have staged their protests in a more innovative, alternative manner, understanding the limitations and the difficulties caused by the ongoing pandemic. They are not the government, as you know. when the Minister of Health gazetted that Sri Lanka is facing a pandemic, the authority, the real authority would shift from the cabinet to Director General of Health. All cabinet decisions are subject to the guidelines given by the Director General of Health. Director General of Health and Medical Officers Associations have repeatedly said we must avoid mass gathering to control the pandemic. So in this backdrop, the opposition shouldn't have staged that kind of a mass scale protest if they truly love the people of this country. I do admit and I repeat that they have the right to express their views, but they should have found alternatives.
The opposition is coming back and hitting that particular statement, saying then why did you all have this entire ceremony last, Thursday in Anuradhapura in order to open up a new Chaitya temple and try to do that kind of thing. So how is that different from what the opposition?
Well, example sense, yes, we should minimize the people as much as possible, but the two examples quoted by the opposition to criticize the government are of course wrong. One is SLPP convention, the second one is Sandahiru Sai opening ceremony. Both those events were arranged according to the guidelines because mass protest. Now look at the photographs of the Sandahiru Sai opening. People are very calm, quiet, maintaining the distance because they all were sitting there, seats being allocated according to guidelines. So the function has been organized according to the guidelines. But here in the protest, now you may have the video clips.
Yes.
Just look at both and compare. The protest people were together, they were sweating, then and they got wet, then they had to remove their mask, and they were all together, and some people were drunk, then they don't know what they are doing. So in this context, right, that particular event has broken the guidelines given by the Director General of Health. So we are not, we have a very simple question to pose my good friends in the opposition. Before talking about their love to the general public, at least show your love and care to your own party members. If you risk not only the lives of your party members, their family members as well. So we should practice what we preach, and we must preach what we practice. That's the words of Gautam Buddha. So unfortunately, the opposition doesn't practice what they preach.
Let's talk about their claims right now. They're saying food prices are skyrocketing. There is no fuel, there is no gas, all that kind of, we see these kinds of nonsense. And you do say that it is the right for them to protest. But then we see the police going and getting court orders from various courts within the Western province in order to quash this. Why is that? No, I admitted their right to protest. And again I said, but not in this manner. This is against the health guidelines. So poor police officers, everybody blames them. They are bound to follow the orders received from the top. Then there are directives given by the Director General of Health. So now in the world, online protest, online petitions, the world is very innovative. At least if you have no capacity to be innovative in the opposition, how can we expect them to be innovative in solving the problem in governance? So you should show them. When we were in the opposition, I can remember, on my request, people use a black flag as their profile picture. Yes. On 8th of January 2016, the day they marked the first anniversary. So we mark our opposition to the government. A lot of people reacted to my request, but there was no mass gathering. But the protest was there. At that time, there was no COVID.
Yeah, but still, we were innovative. We used new instruments. Then I can remember, former president once said, I can remember we used black shirts and sarongs in one of their protests to show our, and black
clothing
and all that, so caps and all that, you know. We use different ways to express our views. That's why we were able to catch the attention of the people.
Let's talk about, it is very clear to me, in my opinion, that the opposition leader is taking a page from your playbook, what you all did back in 2015 up until the time.
Unfortunately, we are now in 2021, not 2015.
Exactly. No. He's doing that now. He has created his own party. He went. He got a little bit of success from the previous election. He is now the opposition leader. Now he's starting a protest, just like how you all started against the government. Now, what I need to, the response that I want to get from you is at the end of 2019, 2018, what the good governance started saying is, yes, we agree, people were very upset with us. It is mainly because we were unable to tell them what we did. We had a communications problem, but we did a lot of things. We changed this, we changed that, but we failed to tell the people. Because of that only, the opposition had the opportunity in order to create a picture with the people saying the government was ineffective. Are you going to give the same response in another 2-3 years down the line? Because I see, honestly, there is a communication gap within this government as well. What you do does not come out. Like, for a simple example, you just said that a person was misleading the public with regard to a fake fuel crisis. This has happened. Now, if that was, communicated very well to the public, tell them, over and over again, why isn't that happening? Are you all expecting to go out of power in another 3 years' time? Is that the plan?
Well, you know, there are good communicators in this government. That's why previously we were able to convince the nation to militarily eliminate the LTT instead of going for a negotiated settlement. When the entire world was advocating to the fact that the LTT cannot be defeated, right? That was the widely held view. But we were able to convince the nation, and we were later able to prove that no, LTT can be defeated, and we defeated. Secondly, as you correctly pointed out, President Mahinda Rajapaksa was defeated by the people with very serious allegations. But within months, we were able to convince that all these were fabricated stories, and he was a competent leader. He should have another chance. So we have shown our team has good our team has leaders with very good communication skills. Then is central bank bond scam. Government repeatedly tried to show there was no such bond scam. There were committees, seminars, books were written by people like Sujeeva Senasinghe. There were legal cases to defend that stand. But somehow we were able to convince the nation that such scam took place. Then, where are these communication experts? If they are silent, if they do not defend the government as they used to do, I mean, government leaders should find out why and solve those issues to compel them to come forward and defend the government, tell the government's version of the stories to the people. Now, if I come back to this fake story of the fuel, it's a different situation. You know, fuel is a very, very essential commodity. I say there would be an imminent fuel crisis. You would say, no, there is no such a crisis. People, as a prudent person, would tend to believe my version, because no harm of believing that. Then you purchase additional stocks to get ready. If they believe your version, they are taking a risk. So when there is two different versions, they choose the prudent one. So that is, of course, a reality in any part of the world, right? Somebody says, hey, somebody is shooting there, don't go. You will be dead. But you say, don't worry, you just go there, nothing would happen. But a prudent person would not take that risk. So that behavioral pattern can be witnessed. So I think our media will act responsibly. Then with that, such person will not be able to abuse the media space to give such kind of wrong messages to the people. With that, we will be able to avoid this kind of situations in the future.
3 more years, very quickly. Minister, you all have 3 more years, where President completed 2 years last week. The government is going to complete 2 years in this August, 2022 August. 3 more years for y'all. Y'all think y'all can pretty much take the country to the place where you guys promised in your manifesto?
True. President completed his second. We celebrated the second anniversary of the president last week. So, true. We spent 2 years. We are to spend 3 more years. The period spent is less than the period to be completed. So, if we should review what we did and find out where we went wrong. So we should not forget the fact that not only Sri Lanka, entire world is in a crisis. I must use this word, unprecedented crisis because of the pandemic. So Sri Lankan situation is worse than most of the other countries because Sri Lanka was anyway in trouble. We had what is the problem in Sri Lanka? Although we are in the last minutes, let me explain in very brief. In a very simple terms, we could say our crisis is the government doesn't have rupees, the country doesn't have dollars. This is the crisis in very simple terms. Why doesn't the government have dollars? Rupees. Because since 1955, we have been spending more than our income. We bridged the gap by borrowing. So by now, by 2018, we have reached our maximum capacity of borrowing. So we can't borrow further. And because of the pandemic, there are a very less number of lenders as well. Secondly, since 1978, we used to spend on import more than our export income since 1978. So by 2019, the gap between export income and import expenditure was $8 billion. We bridged this gap with the foreign currency inflows from tourism and remittance from the expatriate workers. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, both these sources got dried up. That's why we face this crisis. This was not a crisis created by this government. Boom, being prepared since 1955. Unfortunately, it got blasted right now and in a very difficult time because this bomb got blasted when the entire world is in a crisis. Therefore, there are less countries are there to help us as well.
Minister of Energy, Minister Udaya Gammanpila, thank you very much. It always been a very candid discussion. I appreciate you taking the time and joining us in order to tell our viewers, tell the world, tell the country the issues and to get a real picture. I really appreciate the honest conversation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. Thank you very much for joining. Remember to stay positive, test negative. I'll see you next time. Good night.